Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And this one is one of the best kept secrets from the 80s with the Bayer Company, the big pharmaceutical company. This is a whopper. So let's get started. Starts off with Bayer kept selling drug that helped spread HIV and hepatitis C in the 80s. Now follow me on this one. In 1981, concern was growing over an unidentified infectious disease associated with immune system collapse that would later be known as AIDS. In the U.S., it was found mostly in homosexual men and intravenous drug users, while in France, a more diverse group of patients was affected. On July 16, 1982, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, reported 3 hemophiliacs had acquired the disease, HIV. Epidemiologists started to believe that the disease was being spread through blood products, with grave implications for hemophiliacs who had routinely been treated with concentrate made from large pools of donated plasma, much of which was collected by commercial paid donor plasmapheresis prior to routine HIV testing, often in U.S. cities that had large numbers of homosexuals and intravenous drug users, and in some U.S. prisons in underdeveloped countries during the 4 or 5 years of the late 70s through the early 80s, before AIDS was discovered and recognized as a public health concern. In January 1983, the manager of a plasma procurement for Bayer's Cutter Biological Division acknowledged in a letter that there was strong evidence to suggest that AIDS was passed on to other people through plasma products. In March 1983, the CDC warned that blood products appear responsible for AIDS among hemophilia patients. By May of 1983, a Cutter rival began making a heat-treated concentrate, and France decided to halt all imports of clotting factors concentrates. The company Cutter, that's associated with Bayer, feared losing customers. So according to an internal memo, Cutter wanted to give the impression that they were continuously improving our product without telling them they expected soon to also have a heat-treated concentrate. The process rendered the virus undetectable in the product. The process rendered the virus undetectable in the product, according to a government study. By June 1983, a Cutter letter to distributors in France and 20 other countries said that AIDS had become the center of irrational response in many countries, and that this is of particular concern to us because of unsubstantiated speculations that this syndrome may be transmitted by certain blood products. France continued using the older style, the untreated concentrate, through August of 1983. The old style was the cold, not the hot. On February 29th, 1984, Cutter, which is a company associated with Bayer, became the last of the 4 major blood product companies to get U.S. approval to sell heated concentrate. Even after Cutter began selling the new product for several months, until August 1984, the company continued making the old medicine. One reason was that the company had several fixed price contracts and believed that the old product would be cheaper to produce. Bayer officials, responding on behalf of Cutter, issued a statement stating that Cutter continued to sell the old medicine because some customers doubted the new drug's effectiveness and because some countries were slow to approve its sale. The company also said that a shortage of plasma used to make the medicine had kept Cutter from manufacturing more of the new product. Bayer officials also claimed that an overall plasma shortage in 1985 kept Cutter from making more heat-treated medicine. However, because Cutter was using some of his limited plasma to continue making the old product, they may have contributed to the shortage. While Bayer said that the procedural requirements imposed by Taiwan slowed down their ability to sell the new product, according to the New York Times, Hu Chien-wen, an official at Taiwan's health department, said in 2003 that Cutter had not applied for permission to sell the heated medicine until July 1985, a year and a half after doing so in the United States. Cindy Lee, assistant director of Hong Kong's health department, said that Cutter needed only to get an import license in the 1980s to sell the newer product, and that the process would normally take 1 week. While the new product was selling well, a Cutter company meeting noted that there is excess non-heated inventory, which resulted in the company deciding to review international markets again to determine if more of this product can be sold. Cutter decided to sell millions of dollars worth of the older medicine to Asia and Latin America while selling the new, safer product in the West, where the non-heated product was proving increasingly unmarketable. In late 1984, when a Hong Kong distributor asked Cutter about the newer product, records show that Cutter asked the distributor to use up stocks of the old medicine before switching to its safer, better heated product. Several months later, once hemophiliacs in Hong Kong began testing positive for HIV, some local doctors began to question whether Cutter was dumping AIDS-tainted medicine into less developed countries. Cutter denied the allegation, claiming that the unheated product posed no severe hazard and was in fact the same fine product we have supplied for years. By May 1985, when the Hong Kong distributor was told of an impending medical emergency, asking for the newer product, Cutter replied that most of the new medicine was going to the U.S. and Europe, and there wasn't enough for Hong Kong except for a small amount for the most vocal patients. The United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, helped to keep the news out of the public eye. In 1985, the FDA's regulator of blood products, Harry M. Meyer Jr., believing the companies had broken a voluntary agreement to withdraw the old medicine from the market, called together officials of the companies and ordered them to comply. Cutter's notes from the meeting indicated that Meyer asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public, while another company noted that the FDA wanted the matter resolved quickly and quietly. At the same time, a Cutter official wrote that it appears there are no longer any markets in the Far East where we can expect to sell substantial quantities of the non-heated treated medicine, and stopped shipping untreated concentrate in July 1985. According to the New York Times, doctors and patients contacted overseas said they had not known of the contents of the Cutter documents. The number of affected patients is unknown. Since many records are unavailable and because an HIV test was not available at the time, one cannot know whether foreign hemophiliacs were infected with HIV before Cutter began selling its safer medicine or afterward. The New York Times found these largely unnoticed documents, internal memorandums, minutes of the company marketing meetings, as part of the production in connection with the American Hemophiliacs lawsuit described below. Sidney M. Wolf, director of the Public Citizen Health Research Group, which has been investigating the industry's practices for 3 decades, called them the most incriminating internal pharmaceutical industry documents I have ever seen. On August 22, 2003, MSNBC's Scarborough Country had Bear on the Rat of the Week segment. Speaking with Mike Panatoni, a legal advisor to the show, they discussed the 2003 New York Times article referenced above, saying that the product, known by Bayer to bear the risk of contamination, was dropped in Japan, Spain, and France. As of 2003, the United States Justice Department had yet to investigate any corporate executives. In Canada, by the time blood tests began in late 1985, about 2,000 people had been infected with HIV and up to 60,000 with hepatitis C. 3 suits were brought against the Canadian Red Cross by people who had received tainted blood products. In April 2001, the Supreme Court of Canada found the Canadian Red Cross guilty of negligence for failing to screen blood donors effectively for HIV infection. So this is where some of this tainted blood went. Let's tell you about France. In France, an estimated 4,000 people, many of whom were hemophiliacs, were given blood infected with HIV. A former health minister was convicted for failing to adequately screen the blood, leading to the deaths of 5 people from AIDS and the infection of 2 others during a key period in 1985. 2 other government officials that continued to use the old unheated stock in 1985, when a heated product was available, received prison sentences. Allegedly, all 3 politicians delayed the introduction of United States blood screening tests in France until a rival French product was ready to be sold on the market. In Iran, as of 2001, the former head of Iran's Blood Transfusion Center, Dr. Farhidi, went on trial along with 2 other doctors, facing charges including negligence for importing HIV-tainted supplies from France after patients contracted HIV. The case followed complaints by families of around 170 people, many of them children, who had hemophilia or thalassemia. Approximately 300 Iranians were infected by the tainted blood products, according to Iran's Ministry of Health. Iran is the only country that did not receive compensation from France, according to Fars News. When the French Prime Minister Laurent Fabius visited Iran after the Iran nuclear deal, there was renewed controversy and protests, partly due to the infected blood scandal. In Ireland, the Lindsay Tribunal was set up in Ireland in 1999 to investigate the infection of hemophiliacs with HIV and hepatitis C from contaminated blood products supplied by the Blood Transfusion Service Board. According to the tribunal, a minimum figure of 250 hemophiliacs were infected with HIV or hepatitis C while receiving treatment from the BTSB before 1985. In Italy, Angela Margrini, the head of Hemophiliacs Association, said that as of 2001, 1,300 people, including almost 150 children, had died in Italy from infected blood infusions since 1985. In June 2001, an Italian court in Rome ordered the health ministry to pay damages to 351 people who had contracted HIV and hepatitis C through blood transfusions. The court said the ministry was too slow to introduce measures to prevent the virus being spread by donated blood, and did not establish proper checks on plasma and plasma-derived products. Although almost 100 of the victims had already died, the court ruled that their families were still entitled to compensation. In Japan, the health ministry did not ban unheated products until 1985, despite knowing they were contaminated. As a result, over 1,400 Japanese hemophiliacs were exposed to HIV, and more than 500 were believed to have died by 2001. In November 1995, a case involving Japanese hemophiliacs was settled, with compensation of $420,000 for each victim, $235,000 coming from the companies involved and the rest from the Japanese government. This was much higher than the results being discussed in the United States. In 1993, top executives of three companies, Baxter International, Roan, and Alpha Therapeutics, met with leaders of the hemophilia community to outline the terms of a $125 million offer. Rejecting the offer, David Schrager, a plaintiff's lawyer, filed a class action lawsuit with Jonathan Whatley as lead plaintiffs on behalf of American hemophiliacs. Schrager had previously negotiated a favorable settlement on behalf of Canadian hemophiliacs and then established a panel of complainants, led by Whatley, to advise him and other lawyers. In early 1995, the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit in Chicago decertified the lawsuit, saying it might bankrupt the industry. Wow. While Whatley and Corey Dubin, another named plaintiff, favored appealing the Seventh Circuit decision to the Supreme Court of the United States to protect the rights of all affected hemophiliacs, not just those who had already sued, Schrager wanted to pursue the separate federal proceeding that had consolidated hundreds of individuals' lawsuits that had been filed against the producers. By June 1996, the differing groups reconciled, seeking industry settlement proposals. In 1997, Bayer and the other three manufacturers agreed to pay $660 million to settle cases on behalf of more than 6,000 hemophiliacs affected in the United States in the early 1980s, paying an estimated net $100,000 to each infected hemophiliac. The settlement consent decree denied attorney contingent fees and provided a $40 million fund to pay attorneys as ordered by the court. Soon after the settlement, because of the New York State statute of limitations requiring people to file a lawsuit within 3 years of discovering an illness, New York Governor George Pataki signed a bill allowing people infected by blood products or their survivors 2 years to bring product liability suits against the manufacturers. While settled class members are barred from filing suits against the companies, the bill allowed an estimated 75 more eligible persons to file suits. The plaintiffs allege that the companies manufactured and sold blood factor products as beneficial medicines that were, in fact, contaminated with HIV or HCV, hepatitis C, and resulted in this mass infection and or deaths of thousands of hemophiliacs worldwide. The company's failure to follow U.S. federal law and conduct tests against viral hepatitis increased the risk of plasma containing HIV entering plasma pools. Wow. What an incredible story that took place with Bayer and Cutter back in the 80s. And the egregiousness and the arrogance of chasing after the almighty dollar, even at the disbenefit and harm to innocent individuals who were suffering from hemophilia and needed blood transfusions and plasma. These companies knowingly knew by using untreated, The old method of transferring blood plasma was not effective and did not it did not test to see if blood was tainted with HIV or hepatitis C, and they still let it go into the open market, no, being fully aware that contamination could have a high probability. That's why they sent it to those foreign countries that I had spoke about: France, Canada, Iran, Iraq, Japan, Italy, Ireland. Such an unfortunate story. Tell me what you think. I try to raise our level of consciousness and awareness. And just when we think that these pharmaceutical companies have our best interests, I think they put the dollar before people. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.